Turning to a whole different story, there are new signs the criminal investigation into Giuliani is escalating. Federal prosecutors subpoenaing the brother of one of Giuliani's associates who was indicted by the feds. They reportedly blew the door off a safe to get at evidence in this case, and they're probing a $500,000 payment those defendants made to Giuliani. So there's the action by the famously independent prosecutors in New York. By contrast, Mr. Barr's DOJ has not been as aggressive since the Ukraine scandal broke. They even rushed out that announcement that they weren't probing much of this because they didn't think there was a crime. But now, with New York so out ahead of them, the DOJ's criminal division has announced it's providing an expansion of resources to the Giuliani-related case, which could make it broader and go at a much faster pace. And we are back with former federal prosecutor Barbara McQuade. She actually wrote a draft potential indictment, what it might look like, of Rudy Giuliani, as well as political reporter Natasha Bertrand. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening, Ari.
Barbara, where do you see this case going?
Well, the point, that Joyce Vance and I made in drafting this indictment is to show that based on just publicly available information, you could today charge Rudy Giuliani with conspiracy to defraud the United States by interfering with the fair administration of elections. You could charge him with conspiracy to commit bribery, and you could charge him with contempt of Congress. That being said, I think that if I were a prosecutor, I would continue to investigate because there is at least some smoke that there may be additional charges like campaign finance violations with Parnas and Fruman, money laundering charges, potential tax charges, and all of that evidence that you could get on Rudy Giuliani gives him an opportunity to cooperate against others higher in the criminal organization, that being President Trump.
Natasha, I have dealer's choice for you tonight. Do you want to speak on that and build on Barbara's point, or do you want to get right to the voicemail?
The famous butt dial?
Yes.
I think I want to go with that.
Okay. See, we go with where you're ready to go. Barbara's covered that ground pretty well. Let's now take a listen. As I mentioned earlier in the show, this is unusual, but it certainly happens. And Rudy Giuliani talks to all kinds of reporters. He accidentally called back and left a voicemail that basically became a kind of a impromptu surveillance. Here is some of it, and the transcript will be up on the screen.
You know, Charles would have a hard time with a fraud case because he didn't do any due diligence. Tomorrow, I got to get you to get on Bahrain. You got to call. Got to call Robert again tomorrow. Is Robert around? The problem is, we need some money. We need $200,000.
As a reporter, what do you think of when this happens, and what do you glean from it, given that there's so much intrigue about the way Rudy Giuliani does business and allegedly mixes it with a different client, his access to the sitting president?
Yeah, so he's done this before. He actually has a reputation for accidentally calling reporters and leaving lengthy voicemails with his voice in the background discussing things that maybe he shouldn't be discussing. But this is a little bit, it comes at an important moment because Rudy Giuliani is under so much scrutiny for all of the foreign business ties and business dealings that he has and has been doing for the last, several years. So the fact that he's talking about Turkey and Bahrain in this phone call really just drives that home. And of course, Turkey is particularly sensitive at this moment because one of the main things that Giuliani was trying to lobby the Trump administration on was letting this Turkish gold trader and this Turkish bank case go that was very important to the president of Turkey, Erdogan. So this is just yet another example of Rudy, I think, being a little bit of a loose cannon. He's gotten off TV, but he's still making these kinds of mistakes. And just to build off of what Barb was saying before, he has a lot more to worry about because as we're reporting tonight, the Justice Department's criminal division is now joining with the Southern District of New York to kind of broaden the investigation of Giuliani and of his associates and look at kind of the entire picture of Giuliani's financial dealings, his business ties, and potential FARA violations.
Yeah, and so Barbara, I want to be clear, just as a human being, anyone can leave this kind of accidental message. There's no great significance to that, but as an investigator, based on what's on the call, do you view this as merely a little bit, sloppy technology, embarrassing, or do you view this as potential evidence?
You know, it could be potential evidence. I will tell you that lawyers are sort of ultra careful about these kinds of things because to the extent it contains anything that might be attorney-client privilege information, lawyers would typically package that back up and give it back to him, and so wouldn't listen to it. So I'm not sure what to make of it in light of the fact that he's not acting as a lawyer here, but as a target of investigation. So lawyers tend to be ultra careful about these things and to disregard them.
And so, Natasha, what do you see as the timeline here when the Congress is going to go full steam ahead in a Ukraine probe that obviously touches on these allegations around Giuliani while he's in a criminal probe, which no one necessarily would have predicted, but it seems to put a lot more pressure on that over the coming weeks?
Yeah, and of course they've experienced this before, right, with wanting to question witnesses who have been in the middle of a criminal investigation. We experienced that with the Russia probe, and now they're experiencing it all over again. They want to call witnesses who are really enmeshed in things that are going on in, the Southern District of New York, the courts in Washington, D.C. So they're going to have a little bit of trouble getting all of the witnesses that they want. I imagine it's going to be really hard for them to get Rudy Giuliani, for example. But the Democrats are having no shortage right now of witnesses. I mean, they've been very pleasantly surprised with the amount of current administration officials who have been defying the administration's orders, essentially, for them not to appear before Congress. And they have a whole mountain of evidence, so much evidence that they really don't want to stop. They want to keep this kind of parade of people coming to the Hill going for as long as they can to make the strongest case possible, to the point where they don't really even have a timeline themselves at this point.
It's fascinating, and it's a lot happening at once. Appreciate both of you giving us perspective and insight. Natasha Bertrand and Barbara McQuade, thanks to both of you.
Thanks, Ari.
Appreciate it. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.